Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the part 2 of our series of webinar regarding remote workers. Let me just make sure we have our video going. I forgot it's afternoon in some of these time zones here. So my name, Kyle Gande, Regional Sales Manager for Western Canada here. I have a couple of technical panelists joining us today. I have Dave Nicholas as well as Mark Gilner joining us, the Technical Resource Specialist here. We'll be answering your Q&As during the session. And we've actually got a special guest here. We have Mark Ulrich, the XILICA Senior Application Manager with XILICA today. Mark actually has over 19 years of experience in the pro audio industry. He was previously with Symmetrics for over 10 years, and he has been with XILICA for the last 5 months, helping us out with our international distribution of XILICA here in Canada. So before we get started, thanks again for joining, but a few housekeeping items. We will be keeping everybody's microphones muted during the session, and we'll make sure to enter all the questions into the Q&A section. As I mentioned, our 3 panelists will be there to answer them during the session as required, and we will have a dedicated Q&A at the end of today's session. So just diving right in here. So as everybody's aware, Unified Communications, we are now entering a new way of working for many organizations. There's a lot of psychology behind effective communications, especially for remote workers. Issues begin to happen with audio and video. It's not only frustrating, but it can actually alter your messaging, right? So it's very important for us to take the technology seriously in each way it is being deployed, whether it's remote workforce. We are going to see a lot of distance education, or at least a blend of in-person as well as remote distance education. Not to mention our standard way of collaborating across organizations. We will have people going back to the office soon. We are going to have people who are going to remain remote, and not even that, we've also got the increased use of telemedicine in order for doctors to engage patients in a safe manner without obviously affecting the health of anybody, of both the doctor and the patient. So with a lot of these new changes in the ways of working, the ways of communicating, we need to really make sure that all the products, solutions work in harmony to support that human element that is still needed with this type of workplace environment. So one of the biggest issues with a lot of the new collaboration tools is we need to address poor audio. Now, intelligibility is being able to be understood, being comprehensible and clear enough to be understood by the people who are listening to our message. Now, this is even more critical nowadays, because even though we are doing some new video technologies, part 1 of our series, we covered remote video options. The audio is actually a more critical component to ensuring that your message is not lost during the interaction, right? Now, I do have a quick example here of a bad audio. Unfortunately, it's during a morning newscast interview, and we'll just take a look, and you guys will actually notice the difference, and you've probably been in a meeting that has been very, very similar to what this example shows.
Thanks so much for being with us, Christina.
Thank you, Bindu.
Oh, this is so important. I remember being a student and looking for that summer job. It was stressful enough without a pandemic on top of that. So there's a lot of uncertainty right now. What would you say to students who are looking for jobs, and what can they expect this summer?
Sure. Well, at the Youth Employment Center, we work with youth age 15 to 24. So that includes students, non-students. And of course, going into this summer is very unique compared to previous summers. But at the Youth Employment Center, we're working with many employers who are wanting to hire youth for entry-level positions, and not just for the summer, but for into the fall as well as year-round employment opportunities.
You mentioned entry-level positions.
So that was a perfect example of where the interviewee was actually, it appeared she was more focused on the video and framing, but not the audio. So not sure what technology she used in that space. We can make a pretty good assumption that since she did not have a headset or a lapel mic like the broadcaster or the newscaster, that she was using the laptop audio. Obviously, as you guys were part of that, noticed that her message was significantly lost since the intelligibility of her message was very poor, right? The room probably small enough for a one-on-one call, but the problem was the acoustics, right? We had echo, we had cutouts, and if this was more than a 2 or 3 minute interview, let's say this was a half hour to an hour meeting, you're probably going to tune out to whoever is doing the presentation, no matter how important it is. It could even be a CEO, and it's going to be very, very hard for you to listen to that message. So that's just an example of some of the bad audio that you guys, as well as myself, have probably seen across many, many meetings. Now, I'd like to dive into a couple of audio technology terms that will come up during today's webinar. So microphone capsules and elements. These are obviously responsible for the conversion of the sound waves into mic signals. These are the ones that actually, these are the components that actually take our sound waves, convert them to digital signals, and process them, right? Needless to say, a standard microphone capsule, like you see on the left there with Beyerdynamic, that's what generally people see when they think of a microphone capsule or element, but these can also be in arrays, right? A microphone array functions just like a regular microphone, but instead of having only one, they have multiple units that record sound simultaneously. This translates actually into the next form of the technology, which are beam-forming microphones. So these are arrays of microphone elements that can be controlled and shaped via a DSP. So this allows the microphone beams to be aimed at specific areas of the room, right? So you'll hear beam forming, you'll hear beam tracking, but the whole premise is that it will focus on where it detects the audio source coming from, whether that's a person, sometimes unfortunately a laptop, a ringing phone, whatever the case may be. And the fact remains with the beam-forming microphones that sometimes they will determine where people are supposed to sit in the room. However, they're very, very good at focusing on the speaker and blocking out any kind of background noise. That being said, we hear a lot about noise cancellation, echo cancellation, noise suppression, but the main premise with a lot of these microphones is they are going to attempt to filter out background noise. Now, background noise is generally a consistent signal, right? So this could be HVAC noise, this could be, sometimes there's white noise, sometimes it's general, maybe if you're in call center, general chatter and noise around the whole floor space. But what it essentially tries to do, as we can see in the example there, that the blue line there is actually a noise that is being detected, and it sends out or injects, pardon me, a reverse signal, which cancels out the noise as best as it can to make it a nice clean signal. This can be done via software. There could be a secondary microphone element that is listening for the noise and then adapting accordingly. And this could also apply in much more complex situations, like in the bottom, recording an inverting noise where they try and cleans up the signal so that the person talking who is not detected as background noise is actually heard intelligibly. And then that ties into acoustic echo cancellation, or AEC. Now, this is a much more complex and purpose-built type of echo cancellation. What this actually does is this is for when you have a inbound call and you are preventing, or pardon me, the software or the microphone or the DSP is trying to prevent that outbound audio from being rebroadcast back. So taking a look, we're going to not pay attention to the stuff in the middle, but we're going to follow this red line from room A. That person is talking. Let's just say this is a VoIP call. So that person is talking, it passes through the network, and then it is actually broadcast through the ceiling speakers in room B. As you can see, because that's being broadcast through, room B's blue microphone will be picking up that speaker audio, both direct as well as reflections off the wall. So when room B's person starts talking, we're actually getting a mixed signal sent back to room A. You see, we got actually blue and red lines going through. Now, if you do not have AEC, that red line will pass all the way back to room A, and they will hear themselves through a, you ever been on a call where you hear yourself a quarter of a second after you've talked? It is extremely hard for you to be able to convey your message, and it's very, very confusing. Now, here's the key with AEC. If you hear yourself on the call, it's the person on the other end that needs the AEC, not you. A lot of people get this a little bit confused. They think it's their microphone that's picking up their mic twice, or it's picking up your internal or room acoustics. It's actually the person on the other end that needs to cancel that signal. And it's exactly the same as noise suppression and noise cancellation, where it will listen for your audio and then cancel that out on the way back to yourself through the signal process. Can be very complex, but in a nutshell, that is actually how a lot of DSPs are have a function built into them. So that covers a lot of the main audio technical terms that we will be covering today. So we'll dive into a few scenarios where we have to consider our audio requirements here. So at the top of the hour, we talked about remote office space, audio considerations. As I mentioned, once working from home, remote work, this was a luxury, a benefit, something that was nice to have with an organization. In the current state of affairs, this has now moved to being a mission-critical way of organizations to operate. It has now changed the way the global workspace operates. It's a trend that is actually increasing and not slowing down as it's rapidly on the rise. And more employees are actually working in remote positions and almost never going into the office. I've had discussions with employees and customers where they've been in the office twice in the last 6 months, and they've been able to still effectively do their jobs remotely. Now, with the remote office space, we have some considerations we have to think about for the audio. Needless to say, the size of the room. Everybody was scrambling to try and get remote office workspaces set up, so you would be sitting in your kitchen, you'd be sitting in your living room. Some were lucky enough to have a dedicated space in an office, maybe a isolated room in the basement. But the same issue occurs in all of them. The larger the room, the more chance for background noise, the more chance for echoes, as well as obviously other distractions in that space, right? And then this also accounts for the distance to the microphone. Going back to our bad audio example there with that interviewee, she was not close enough to the microphone, wherever it may have been, whether it was a laptop or a small little USB mic, that it was not picking up her effectively, and it was picking up a lot of it was trying to adapt to some of the background reverberations. So general rule of thumb, closer to the microphone. Ideally, you would want a headset, but sometimes, myself included, maybe that's not the best way, or you prefer not to use a headset, so you have to consider that. So I found this poll online, ironically, it was from 2019, and the biggest struggle with working remotely, and most of those are actually non-technologically related. But number 3 there, 17% are having issues with the collaboration or the communication portion of working remotely. I'm not here to help you with your loneliness. I'm not here to help you take vacation time and fix your Wi-Fi, but I'll tell you what, let's see how we can help you with that communication portion of working from home. So we do have an actual portable solution here from Beyerdynamic. It is the Beyerdynamic Classis B boundary microphone USB. This is an ideal small little USB 2.0 microphone for video conferencing, meetings, or distance learning, and it actually is a standard USB 2.0. This has the ability to be set to on or off. So you set the mic on, you're having your call, etc. It doesn't mute until you turn it off, or push to talk or push to mute. So the push to talk, I think, is actually one of the more beneficial features of this microphone. You have your LED showing whether you're live or not. But a lot of people, myself included, have forgot our microphone is live when we're done speaking or done asking our questions. So if this is a push to talk in a USB microphone, you release the button, and now you don't have to worry about your background noise being injected into the call, right? This little unit actually has a pretty good pickup range for up to about 10 people. So roundtable discussions where you don't want to huddle, or you shouldn't be huddling around the laptop microphone, you can bring this into a small huddle space, have a call, and everybody would be heard intelligibly. We've got some built-in noise suppression in here, as mentioned before, and they have a radio frequency interference proof with their Scudio technology. This doesn't come up very often anymore, but they have shielding built in. Have you ever been on a call and you're going to receive a call on your cell phone at the same time and you get those weird blips through the microphone? This has some built-in shielding to negate that. And then the noise suppression, it does actually do its best to compensate for background noise. Like I said, as long as the noise is consistent, it will attempt to suppress that noise, while also being able to, you can adjust the gain switch to adapt for loud or quiet speakers in the space, right? Because then it's going to try and make sure everybody's audio levels are the same level during the call. Great little unit. As you saw, pretty portable. This is a little unit you could pack in your laptop bag when you're going on remote sessions. That way you have effective audio if you didn't have your headset, or you wanted to have a small huddle space discussion as part of your meetings. Great little unit. So for remote office spaces, as I mentioned, there's not too much to consider there. However, if we move into slightly larger spaces, everybody is probably pretty familiar with the huddle rooms, the breakout rooms. These are generally deployed in open working environments. They're more and more important and more mission critical because they're suited for quick collaboration, and they are meant to not interrupt the daily workflow. Not to mention, with everybody being remote, you have to be able to have the ability to bring your own device into those meeting spaces. And if you're lacking the technology for those quick ad hoc meetings, you're huddling around the laptop again, which is completely ineffective, right? 2 to 4, sometimes 6-person rooms are considered huddle spaces. But if we look at the audio considerations, a lot of the same considerations. However, now we've got to worry about our room coverage. More people, probably a larger space. We need to ensure everybody is picked up effectively. We need to be able to be cognizant of the background noise. Now, because this huddle space is an organization, we got to look at HVAC noise. We got to look at, outside noise just outside the wall where the working areas and the cubicles. And that translates also into where's the microphone located. Obviously, having a microphone right on the table is fantastic. However, as you can see here, if everybody's got their laptops open, it's a small little microphone, you're going to be covering up that microphone. Or if you want to spread out papers or drawings, that microphone is now actually in the way. Smaller rooms, room acoustics, needless to say, harder surfaces, higher reflections and reverberations, as well as we got to consider the BYOD factor. We have to be able to come in, connect, use the technology, and leave as quickly and effectively as possible. So AMX actually has the AMX Acendo Vibe premium soundbar available. And in fact, this is what I'm using right now for today's call. I have this one, the soundbar without the webcam, on my desk right now, sitting about 5 to 6 feet away from me. And as you can hear, pretty good unit here. It's just sitting on my tabletop, could be wall or tabletop mounted, but the audio was actually designed by the JBL team at Harman. And it's actually great for broadcasting music. It has far field microphones, so we've actually had the ability to pick up users within the room up to 15 to 18 feet away. So this will suit very well for those small to medium huddle space options. And here's where we see the first instance of built-in acoustic echo cancellation. Because it's a soundbar with the microphones paired right next to the speakers, if you are having a Microsoft Teams call or a Zoom call, obviously the audio is going to come out right next to the microphone. This cancels out that from being sent back over the call, and it's just integrated right into the algorithms of the unit. And as I mentioned, this is actually a USB 2.0 for BYOD devices, right? Not USB 3, not USB-C, which could cause some issues with legacy devices, but 90% of the laptops and BYOD devices out there are going to have USB ports, right? And as I mentioned, wall mount or tabletop, as you notice, we're putting this at the front of the room. Generally, it's going to be under the display for the presentation. Well, that means now everybody is going to be facing the same direction. The table is now clear for laptops, papers, building plans, whatever it may be, and we are all focused towards where the microphones are ready to pick up. That being said, as you can see here, it actually comes with a webcam option. So we've actually got a 120-degree wide-angle lens webcam option available. As I mentioned, I'm using just the soundbar right now, but it also comes with a wireless remote, little wireless remote puck, as well as it is able to switch between multiple audio sources. The wireless remote puck, volume control, Bluetooth end call, as well as microphone muting. Don't have to get up, go to the front of the room to adjust the volume or mute the microphone. That would be counterintuitive to this unit. And then the audio sources that are available, we've actually got our HDMI input. We could actually pair our smartphone to this unit via Bluetooth. So again, rather than huddling around the smartphone for a call that maybe the room technology can't support, you could pair this up to your Bluetooth device and still have an effective call with everybody, as well as support for analog and optical audio ins, so we can actually support and integrate with other room technologies, as well as hearing enhancement or listening, assisted listening systems as well. So we could broadcast that out to an assisted listening transmitter for somebody who may be hard of hearing. Great little option here to go under the LCD, and it's simply all built in. We've actually got the wall mounting bracket is built right into the unit, so it can flip open for accessibility to the cables, the ports, and then they're run through the wall to under the table or wherever they're needed. And as you can see, you connect your laptop up via USB, HDMI. Your presentation is broadcast up to the screen through the HDMI pass-through, which also includes CEC controls for on and off response triggers. And then we are actually able to use the Acendo Vibe for our Microsoft Teams, Zoom room call, WebEx, BlueJeans, you name it. It is a USB peripheral. Doesn't matter for any unified communication platform. So that covers, we've covered our remote office spaces, we've covered our huddle space solutions here, but now, which is actually going to be very interesting, is how we are going to actually bridge the gap in organizations who are going to start having their company, their workers come back to the office. We are now implementing a new remote platform, a new unified communication platform, but the issue now becomes how do we integrate those legacy technology systems into the new unified communication platform. Generally, they're treated as two independent systems, but this is actually where XILICA will come in as a bridge. And I will actually hand it off to Mark Ulrich here with XILICA to kind of go over the history and vision of XILICA.
Thanks, Kyle. It's good to be with all of you today. I'll give you a quick intro to XILICA, and then we'll be available for any questions at the end. For those of you that aren't familiar, XILICA is an award-winning manufacturer. We build enterprise-ready, networked AV solutions. We're actually headquartered in Toronto, Canada, and we have additional facilities in Amsterdam, Dubai, and Hong Kong. I happen to be in the States. I'm in Oregon. We're distributed in 75 countries, 75 plus countries around the world, and we're really driven in these types of unified communication, AV, IT type of markets and applications, conference and corporate, retail, hospitality, government, education, healthcare. And we're really trying to bring the convergence of AV and IT not only into the technology, but into our business practices as well, and the way that we go to market. We've all been talking about this AV-IT convergence for, 5 or 10 years now, and we all know how to put audio and video on a network, but what we're seeing is that manufacturers, distributors, integrators, we're all still adapting to what that means in terms of the way that we go to market and the way that we interface with the specifiers and with our customers, our end users. So we're trying to bring that convergence not only in our product development, but into our marketing and our brand partnerships and the other manufacturers that we partner with and our channel partner alignments, like with Techni Contact, for example, perfect example of a very AV-IT-centric partnership. The vision behind our products is that of a modular vision and that of being IT ready, speaking the IT language. We also focus on powerful ultra small format DSPs. Our QR1, which we'll see here in a bit, is a quarter rack space unit, but it has the full power of our flagship FR1 processor as well. So we're bringing this modular sort of ultra small format solution into this AV-IT space. The modular format is important because it really gives you the ability to match the hardware to the system requirements exactly. In a fixed format system, every unused channel is simply wasted cost. It's inflexible. It can be difficult to future-proof. You have enormous SKU quantities. I recently did some analysis to the competition. One of our main competitors took 22 SKUs to do what we can do in 9. And that's really the beauty of having the frame and the card format. You can build these systems on a granular level and match them to the system requirements in a very exacting way. It's also less overhead. It's better for logistics and warehousing and everything top to bottom. So we really believe in the modular solution. We also are working on creating an ecosystem in and around our products, and that pertains to the type of control system that we have natively with our touchscreens, with our wall panels, but also things like our iOS and Android apps, or our Mac and PC apps. It extends outside of our product range to third party as well with AMX, Crestron, Control 4. And more and more we're seeing the evolution now of soft codecs as well. So Microsoft Teams and Zoom and Skype and Google Hangouts and being compatible with those types of platforms. So this is really the space that we're focusing on, and it's in aligning with partners like Techni Contact that gives us that ability to really to leverage that type of ecosystem in this AV-IT space. So that's a quick overview of XILICA. I'll turn it back over to Kyle, and then we'll be available for questions at the end.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mark. Great overview of XILICA, Canadian-based company based out of Toronto. And while Mark was talking there, I purposely did not mute my microphone on my Acendo Vibe. And I don't think you guys heard any echo or anything coming from Mark. So that was a quick example of how acoustic echo cancellation makes sure that your calls are intelligible and clear. So Mark touched on it already, the quarter rack unit and the FR1, the full rack unit here. These are modular DSPs, card-based DSPs. The QR1 is 8 card slots, or the FR1 is a full 16 card slots. Each card is actually 2 inputs or outputs. So in fact, the small little QR1 there that is just as powerful as the FR1 has actually 16 input or output channels, and then the FR1 actually has 32. This enables obviously full modularity, as well as the FR1 has the ability for Dante 64 by 64 channels of Dante. those of you who are not familiar with Dante, Dante is simply broadcasting audio over a standard IP network. So we were actually able to transmit an audio signal over the customer's network to be received by a Dante receiver amp or computer or microphone, whatever that may be. So a full 64 by 64 built into the FR1, as well as 4 by 4 built into the small little QR1. That being said, the QR1, that little guy right there, he can be PoE powered, as well as the power supply that comes with could be powered with it simultaneously. So to have a small little quarter rack unit, which by the way is less than 2 inches tall, that little QR1 could be mounted behind a display or in a huddle space, and you would not need a rack. And it's PoE powered. Unfortunately, the FR1 is, well, fortunately, is power supplied, standard 120 volt right there. I'd be impressed if XILICA could power that with PoE, but I don't think that's coming down the pipe anytime soon. Mark, correct me if I'm wrong. And then both units come with their proprietary XILICA Hear Clear AEC. As we discussed, AEC enables that you don't have signals being rebroadcast out to the calls causing echoes. This is built into both the QR and FR1. Both have their own XILICA proprietary integrated control system. So we actually have the option to put in GPIO, relay cards, as well as control IP-based third-party devices, such as projectors, displays, etc. And as Mark mentioned, full support for third-party control modules, the Trons, Crestron, Extron, AMX, as well as Control 4. These are all available from this system. Now, how are we going to be bridging our traditional audio systems to the UC platform? We have a USB audio card available for both of these systems. It's a full 2x2 USB 2.0 audio card, so we can take traditional audio inputs, microphones, and convert them to USB audio to be used by these upcoming and mission-critical unified communication platforms. So now we're bridging the gap. We're not taking legacy microphones, goosenecks, throwing them out and putting in a table puck system, or even having two completely separate systems that the user is dependent on to select the right system based on their call. So how does this look in a traditional system? So simple, basic upgrade here. Let's say we have a traditional video conference room, and when I say traditional video conference room, I mean hard codecs such as Polycom, Lifesize, Cisco WebEx. There is a hard codec box in that room. And traditionally, the microphones, whether they be ceiling or goosenecks, are going to feed right into that hard codec, and then that's it. You're going to be broadcasting from there out to the amplifier, to the speakers, and you are generally not going to be able to use those goosenecks or those ceiling microphones in your Microsoft Teams call. That might be traditionally a separate system. Here, we can add a USB card into a QR1 to bridge that gap. Now we are taking the audio from our ceiling mics. So in this case, we've got a Beyerdynamic MPR 210 ceiling mic, as well as one of their goosenecks, probably an MU23. And we are now going to make that USB audio available for our Teams, Skype, Google Hangouts, or Zoom room from the laptop, because it is standard USB 2.0. At the same time, we're still going to be able to feed the legacy audio over to those Polycom systems, those life-size video conference codecs, as well as broadcast out to the in-room amplifier and speakers. So pretty small, little powerful unit that will actually enable you to get a much more higher return on investment on your meeting room equipment, as well as future-proof it for the new way of working here. So that's a simple upgrade example, but let's take it one step further. Let's say we actually want to go a full unified communication solution with bring your own device capabilities. So we've taken, again, same methodology. We have a Polycom codec or a Cisco WebEx codec, room microphones, gooseneck and ceiling, and what we have done here, we have added a AMX connectivity and transport kit, particularly the 1402. This 1402 enables both video switching, video distance transport, it's a transmitter-receiver pair, as well as USB device peripheral sharing. So we have a USB camera up front. That could be a Minray UV510, UV570, standard USB 2.0 into the receiver. And in a traditional video conference scenario, that camera would be made available to the Polycom hard codec because it actually has an HDMI out as well. But what we've done here is if I come in with my laptop, this is a Polycom room, I come in with my laptop and I want to engage in a Microsoft Teams call, or let's say we're going to do a Zoom room webinar like we are today. Traditionally, I wouldn't be able to do that. Now, I would plug in my laptop with USB at the transmitter at the table and HDMI, and the CTC 1402 will automatically switch the video, the audio, and the USB peripherals to be used by my laptop. So now Microsoft Teams laptop is using that USB camera in the room, the Beyerdynamic ceiling microphone, as well as the ceiling speakers and amplifier that's built in. Again, very simple upgrade, and then when I'm done with my Zoom room or my Microsoft Teams call, I disconnect my laptop, the CTC will auto switch back to sending all the audio and video back to the Polycom, move on with our day. So very, very powerful and flexible solution here. Simple upgrade, QR1, USB cards, as well as the AMX CTC 1402 gives you a full unified BYOD solution for hoteling spaces. And as we can see on the cards there, we've got our GPIO. I unfortunately didn't update this picture here, but we've also got a 2-channel relay card available for this, as well as we see we've got our audio inputs and output card. The audio input card available for XILICA does provide phantom power to the gooseneck microphones as well for obviously your powering the microphone, and the LED rings generally controlled by the GPIO. So fantastic options here to start bridging that gap between our legacy technology in the rooms, where we still have maybe it could be a Cisco WebEx, could be a Polycom HDX 8000 or a Real Presence or a life-size codec. But now we can have our remote workers who come back in the office still engage in the same way they've been working for the last 3 to 6 months. Great, great options here. So just going into reviewing how we approach audio solutions, we're going to have to tailor the solution to the space requirements, right? So remote office workers, home office workers, such as myself and a lot of you guys out there, needless to say, we want to make sure that we have a good, high-quality USB microphone available. Headset is going to be your best option, but I don't know about you, I like to keep my hair looking good, so a USB microphone such as the Classis 53 USB, great option there. And then when we start going back to the office, our small 2 to 6 person rooms, the huddle spaces, the breakout rooms, the ad hoc meetings, now we got to be able to enable more BYOD collaboration, because it might not be me presenting with my laptop, could be my colleague with their MacBook Pro or their iPad or what it may be. And the AMX Acendo Vibe, as I mentioned, is what I've been using for this entire call here. Great, great option, tabletop or wall mounted, with the option to make it a full-blown webcam and soundbar with AEC built in. And then we move into the larger spaces, right? This is where the legacy stuff usually sits. Our boardrooms, our classrooms, large classrooms for the distance education folks, as well as multifunction spaces. So we need to be able to somehow be able to do a Teams call from a multifunction space that is divided by air walls, as well as large conference rooms, even executive boardrooms, right? And that's where XILICA, based out of Toronto, with the QR, the FR1, and their USB audio card come in. Now, a side note, that QR1, that is small enough that it could actually assist with huddle space deployments as well. That unit being less than 2 inches tall, in fact, I think my iPhone was almost about the same footprint as that unit in terms of when you're looking at it from the top, that could be installed under a very small table and allow for proper audio processing in a room that may have some issues with acoustics, glass walls, hard surfaces, maybe with a lot of some of these new architectural a lot of these new architectural deployments where they have open ceilings and the HVAC is exposed. You see the metal ceiling deck right there. So great option to make sure you have proper acoustic, echo cancellation, and DSP processing in those spaces. So as you can see, with Beyer, AMX, and XILICA, we have a whole host of options here to address all the concerns that are going to be coming up in the next 6 to 12 months with organizations who are both going to be keeping their workers remote as well as bringing them back to the office for occasional meetings, team meetings, as well as large-scale, maybe quarterly meetings. So we're able to bridge that gap all the way from unified communications over to legacy hardware. So that being said, we're at about 20 minutes here. We got about 4 or 5 minutes for questions. Open for Q&A, everybody, and let you drop them in the Q&A panel here. And I noticed we had one question from Eric, and Mark mentioned that the HDMI. So Eric's question was regarding a couple of scenarios for the Acendo Vibe. A user will be able to use it as a web conferencing platform via USB, and the mic could be set as USB, but the audio would be possible through the HDMI. So Mark responded that the HDMI is actually a pass-through, and the audio output would be via the speakers, and this needs to be done this way for AEC via the onboard DSP. Thank you for that, Mark. Thanks for covering that question. So we'll give it a couple of minutes here if anybody has any more questions regarding the solutions we covered today. Sorry, if somebody's typing, I'll give you a minute here because I can't, it's not like a chat window where I can see if you're typing or not, so we'll kind of hang tough on this one.
Just to piggyback on that last one, this is Mark at XILICA again. The opportunity to use the FR1 or the QR1 as an outboard AEC is really powerful, especially in these systems where your systems of any level of sophistication really outside of just a soft codec, just a laptop running Teams or Zoom or what have you. And so as Kyle mentioned earlier, our Hear Clear AEC, it's an award-winning AEC algorithm. It is activated with a license, so you actually don't pay for the AEC unless you need to deploy it. There are no additional cards for the AEC, so any way that you're ingesting audio into the system, whether it's through USB or analog or digital or what have you, those channels can be routed internally in our DSP to that AEC algorithm. And being able to configure and manage AEC within the DSP gives you a lot more power and customization in that AEC application. As many of you may know, AEC is a very environmentally dependent application, and the size of the room, the acoustics, the proximity of the speakers to the microphones, sources of noise, be it fan noise or HVAC, there are just a ton of variables involved in AEC, and being able to bring that into an open architecture environment is very useful, and it really gives you the ability to tune the AEC and to address things beyond the echoes like the steady state noise and latency issues. All that can be handled, managed in a really handsome way within our QR1 or our FR1. There are 2 different formats, and it's based on the size of the room, and it's based on what we call tail length. In other words, the reverberant property of the room. And so there are 2 different modules, one large and one small. And with the small one, you can actually get up to 16 total channels of AEC. With the larger one, because it's more processor intensive, you get 8 channels of AEC. But in theory, with that single QR1, again, that quarter rack space unit, you could have 2 microphone channels per AEC reference, which would give you the ability to manage up to 8 rooms with a quarter rack space unit. So you could manage 8 huddle rooms with 1 quarter rack space DSP, and these could be completely discrete, independent huddle rooms. So again, there's so much packed into that little quarter rack space unit. I can't underscore it enough.
Fantastic, yeah. And we did have a question come in during that, Mark. The USB card for the DSP are ordered as options, right? Absolutely. So back to what Mark was saying, how XILICA is focusing on the modularity and customizing the hardware for your deployments and customers. The USB card, same cards you'll see on the QR one, work in the FR one. Same with the AEC. It's the same license. It's just a license code that is linked to the DSP. Unfortunately, the AEC license is not transferable. It's not a license pool. It is locked to whatever DSP via the MAC address, right? So back to what Mark was saying, in smaller deployments, let's say we have a large-scale deployment and we're looking at 10 or 12 QR1s being deployed, but we hit an issue in a larger space room. We need AEC in that particular room, that particular application. Well, you're only going to buy AEC for that one DSP in that one room. The other 9 are going to function perfectly fine because it's custom tailored to that space. And as I mentioned, all the I/O cards are compatible between both the QR and the FR1. So we're coming up on 11:45 my time, probably 1:45 everybody else's time here. So I wanted to just thank everybody for joining us today. It was appreciated that you're able to take the time, jump in on part 2 of our webinar series, and hopefully you'll be able to catch the part 1 recording, as well as we are going to be sending out the recording link for today's session, as well as a poll. If you guys don't mind, take a couple of minutes, respond to that poll. It'll help us build our next webinar series, or as well as part 3. Which hopefully we'll plan in the next coming months here. Other than that, I don't think we have everything. I'm just going to check to see if we have any other questions. Oh, one question came from Amand regarding XILICA. It is an open architecture, yes. So you will be able to, it's not a fixed architecture. The XILICA Designer software enables you to drag and drop in whatever modules you require for processing, whether it's high or low pass filters, AEC, gains, gates, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, that being said, we also do have templates available. So if the open architecture is new to any of you, or it can be intimidating, I know it was for me when I started open architecture programming many years ago, we do have templates to get you started. And I should also mention, in the upcoming release of our designer software, this is the software that manages the FR1 and QR1, we're launching a Lua scripting engine. And this really opens up a lot of power in terms of the DSP's ability to really be the center of the control ecosystem. It is it's a programming environment. Some of you may be familiar with it, and it will allow you to create your own modules, your own drivers. So if you have a set of peripherals that you want to work with and you want to use XILICA as the control engine behind it, you can now, through the Lua scripting, create your own drivers, your own modules for really virtually infinite possibilities for third-party control and communication. So this is a really big release coming up, and that should be dropping here in the next probably 2 weeks. We'll see that.
Awesome, thanks Mark. And we did have a question. So XILICA Designer is a free download from xilica.com. You can go online, download it, start playing around with the open architecture, as well as the XILICA certification. Level 1 is available for free online as well. It's about 4 to 5 hours, so if you want to dive a little bit more into how XILICA Designer works, not to mention just the DSP, but the control functionality and their touch panel interfaces, great way to get your feet wet within the XILICA ecosystem there.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's just a newly released online training. And like Kyle said, within probably a half a day, you can get through that. It is also CTS accredited. So if you are needing those CTS points, that's a good way to do it.
Awesome. So we'll hang tough for a couple more questions here. We're about 10 minutes out. If nobody has any other questions here, like I mentioned, we've actually got a recording link that will be sent out after this, as well as a poll, which, as I mentioned, would be great if you guys could respond to that. Let us know how we can improve. You know, and it's fine. I don't know if there's an option in the polling to say this is the perfect webinar you've ever had, but, you know, I'd like to think it was. So other than that, thanks again, guys. Thanks for everybody for joining today, and I hope you have a good rest of your week.